On behalf of B'nai B'rith Canada, welcome to tonight's debate. I'm Richard Robertson, B'nai B'rith Canada's Director of Research and Advocacy, and it is my honor to serve as tonight's moderator. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank David Gronowski, B'nai B'rith Canada's Director of Government Relations, for his efforts to ensure that this important event became a reality, and to thank all the members of B'nai B'rith Canada's team who have been and are working behind the scenes tonight. Without them, this debate would not be possible. I also want to thank our candidates for taking the time out of their busy campaign schedules to be here tonight. We are truly privileged to have the opportunity to hear from 3 candidates. Each candidate will have the opportunity to deliver an opening statement. Opening statements will be restricted to 4 minutes maximum. Each candidate will then have the opportunity to provide a 2-minute answer to each of our 5 questions. At the conclusion of each question, each candidate will have the opportunity to provide a 1-minute rebuttal. We will then open the floor to questions from the audience. Audience members can submit questions to B'nai B'rith Questions using the chat function. I would like to remind our audience that there will be a zero tolerance for derogatory comments or profane language. We will endeavor to take 3 questions from the audience, and each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer. Finally, each candidate will have the opportunity to deliver closing remarks of 2 minutes max. For fairness' sake, each candidate will alternate which candidate goes first for the opening remarks, moderated questions, and closing remarks, and we will alternate which candidate goes first for each of the 3 questions from the audience. Candidates, although I know this is unnecessary, I ask that you debate in a respectful manner that is representative of the office that you seek. I will be recording time, and if required, I will inform you when there is 10 seconds left in each segment. You will have the ability to unmute yourselves, but I ask that you remain muted until I've acknowledged that it is your turn to speak. Now, in no particular order, I would like to introduce you to tonight's candidates. Mr. Vince Gasparo. Deeply rooted in the neighborhood of Eglinton-Lawrence, Vince is actively involved with organizations such as Villa Charities and the Upper Avenue Community Association. For over 20 years, Vince has dedicated his career to building a better future for both the community and the country. With extensive experience in finance and government, holding a wide range of executive roles, he has always strived to create meaningful impact. Vince has had the privilege of serving on boards such as the Canada Infrastructure Bank, Post Media, World Wildlife Fund, and Toronto Community Housing Corporation. He has also represented Canada at the United Nations climate conferences, including COP26 in the UK, COP27 in Egypt, and COP28 in the UAE. Vince Gasparo is currently running as the Liberal candidate for Eglinton-Lawrence. Ms. Karen Stintz, currently President and CEO of Variety Village in Variety, the children's charity Ontario. Variety Village is the social enterprise that was built by Variety, the children's charity of Ontario. Variety Village is a center for social inclusion in Southeast Scarborough that has been serving hundreds of thousands of families since 1949. Before joining Variety Village, Ms. Stintz was the Toronto City Councillor for Eglinton-Lawrence for 11 years. While serving on the council, Ms. Stintz was chair of the Toronto Transit Commission. The Toronto Transit Commission is the 3rd largest transit system in North America. Ms. Stintz is currently running as the Conservative candidate for Eglinton-Lawrence. Mr. Wayne Ivan Chishevsky. Passionate about community and sustainability, Wayne served as president of Oceans, OCEANS, leading efforts to clean Ontario's lakes, local ponds, and parks, while educating others on the importance of protecting our environment. Mr. Chishevsky has also volunteered with the Cleanup Society, where his team removed over 125 kilograms of waste from public spaces and has worked with residents at Fudger House Long-Term Care. Mr. Chishevsky is currently running as the Green Party candidate for Eglinton-Lawrence. Now for our opening statements. We will start with Mr. Chishevsky, followed by Mr. Gasparo, and then Ms. Stintz. Mr. Chishevsky, you have 4 minutes.
Well, good evening, everybody. I hope everybody's doing good. I'm very honored to be on B'nai B'rith. So, first of all, my name is Wayne Chishevsky, and I'm proud to be running with the Green Party in Eglinton-Lawrence. So, some things about me. I am a student, and I'm not a career politician. I'm a community member, of course, who's lived the challenges that people here face every day. From navigating the city without EV infrastructure to watching crime and drug use rise in public parks, I've seen how neglected our communities have become, right? And so I joined the Green Party because it's time for real change, not just for empty promises that are just going to keep coming out. A platform focuses on public safety, affordable housing, local food independence, and strong environmental leadership, right? But above all, I'm running to restore trust and accountability in politics, one conversation at a time. For the past 9 years that I've been a student, I've watched how the liberals, the conservatives, and the NDP have torn our country apart, and it is time that there's new voices in politics, and this is why I'm running to start a new change.
Thank you, Mr. Krzyzewski. Mr. Gasfero, we now go to you. You have 4 minutes.
Thanks, Richard. And I'd like to start by thanking the leadership at B'nai B'rith for organizing this important discussion. I would also like to thank all of you who are joining us from across the riding, including my friends at Baycrest, who I know are watching as well. The fact that all of you are here listening to us discuss issues related to the Jewish community, even though the three candidates are not Jewish, is a testament to our diversity. As many of you know, my name is Vince Caspero, and I've been an ally and friend to the Jewish community well before I ever ran for elected office. My journey with the community started in the late 1990s, not that I'm trying to age myself, while completing my undergraduate studies at York University, when people there were promoting this thing called the BDS movement. Not knowing what it was at the time, I started to do some research and realized quickly that the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement was a not so subtle form of hate and anti-Semitism. My support for the Jewish community increased further in 2010 when I was one of the first non-Jews to serve on CJ PAC's Action Committee. And further still, when in 2013, I led a Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs delegation with clean energy executives to Israel, even spending some time on a kibbutz near the Golan. I have long stood with the Jewish community, and quite frankly, I always will. It's easy for career politicians to say they are an ally only when they're running for elected office. I'm proud of my record of standing with all of you unconditionally. Tonight, you're going to hear my views, quite frankly, on several issues. Many of these are public policy positions that I have supported for quite a while and commit to acting as your member of parliament for Eglinton-Lawrence. The first is I'm a strong proponent of bubble legislation, which in fact would create safety zones around social institutions, schools, synagogues, hospitals, seniors' homes, daycare centers, etc. This means anyone who commits a crime within 100 meters of one of these institutions will face increased levels of criminality and penalties. This legislation, quite frankly, is so important to me that I raised this specifically with the Prime Minister last week, and him and I spoke at length about this. The second, as your member of parliament, I will move a private member's bill increasing the penalty for anyone who commits a crime while covering their face. I will work with like-minded members of parliament from all parties. This, quite frankly, is a non-partisan issue. And if I'm being even more frank, we need to understand that Jewish values are Canadian values, and it's time we get back to them. The third point is that I believe strongly in enhancing the trade relationship between Israel and Canada, a relationship that was initialized by my former boss, Prime Minister Paul Martin, when he was then finance minister, and is more important now than ever before, as President Donald Trump has imposed a 17% tariff on Israel that he justified by saying, and I quote, Israel steals America's intellectual property. Needless to say, continuing to enhance our free trade agreement is critical. So I look forward to speaking about these issues and many others over the next hour to show you that I'm the best choice to be your member of parliament for Eglinton-Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Gasparo. Ms. Stintz, the floor is yours. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you very much. And thank you to B'nai B'rith, not just for organizing tonight, where the community gets to hear from the candidates, but also for the leadership role that you've played throughout the last couple of years that have been particularly difficult for the Jewish community, highlighting the need to combat anti-Semitism, the likes of which I've not ever seen in my lifetime. And so I want to thank you, and I want to thank everybody for taking the time today to hear about your candidates that are running in Eglinton-Lawrence, which for an election, which I believe is the most consequential election that we have had in our lifetime. So I guess I actually have the honor of being the only politician in the group, because I was a city councillor for 11 years and I represented Eglinton-Lawrence. And I can tell you, one of the finest things about being a politician is that you get to represent the community. And you get to learn about the community and you get to know the community. And I've been very privileged. And as I go door to door, I hear from the community and they remember the work that I've done. And I hear about the concerns that they have. And the number one issue in this community is crime. And it is felt uniquely by the Jewish community because of the rise of anti-Semitism that we've seen. We've seen it in our over the overpass. We've seen it at the synagogues. We've seen it in front of the hospitals. We've seen it on our streets. And the reason it exists is because we don't have leadership that will stop the hate that we see in our streets. And it started from the Liberal Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and it's continuing on with the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, because he had a chance to do things differently and he didn't. He had a chance to make a statement around how he would support Israel, and instead he decided to give $100 million to Gaza. And when asked if he knew about genocide in Palestine, he said he was aware, and that's why Canada has an arms embargo. And so I would be interested to hear from the Liberal candidate if he stands by his leader's words. And in fact, he also believes that there's genocide in Palestine. I do not believe that. I believe that the Jewish community has been under a unique threat. As I say, directly as a result of the lack of leadership from our Prime Minister, in some cases, our Premier and our Mayor. I have had the privilege to serve as a city councillor, and I know that we can combat the hate that we see on our street with the laws that we have in place if we had leadership. And that is why I am running to be the MP for Eglinton-Lawrence, because I believe that we have the tools. We just haven't had the moral claritude, the moral fortitude, the courage, and the leadership to deal with the hate in our street and keep our communities safe. So I look forward to tonight. I look forward to debating the issues. I look forward to giving the community some sense that tomorrow will be better than the last 9 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stintz. We will now proceed to our 5 questions. Ms. Stintz will answer first, followed by Mr. Gasparo, and then Mr. Krzyzewski. Our first question is, if elected, what changes to the criminal code will you and your party make to better fight hate crimes and help law enforcement stop them? Ms. Stintz, you have 2 minutes.
So we have seen, and I'm not giving anybody news that they don't already know, that there's been a 251% increase in crimes and over 400% increase in hate crimes. And so the question is, do we have sufficient laws, or are we just not enforcing the laws that we have? And we can see from all levels that the laws that we have in the books are the laws that we need to enforce. But we've seen time and time again that they're not. And our proof points are all around us. We can point to the Indigo 11 that were clearly committing hate crimes, and not one of those arrested was charged. And so we do need to look at our leadership at the federal level and at the municipal level and ask ourselves why it is that we don't stand up and enforce the laws that we have. And again, it comes back to a couple things. One is we don't have the leadership. We haven't empowered our law enforcement to crack down on these illegal protests and these hate crimes and then charge them for what they are. We also have a catch and release system, whereas when we catch somebody and we hold them in jail for the afternoon, we release them on bail, they're out the next day to commit the same crimes again and again and again. And because we haven't taken a strong stand, we see the hate proliferate on our streets, on our campuses, and it goes unchecked. And it's now been normalized to the point where people think that we are tolerating it, and we are tolerating it. And every time it happens, I hear politicians say, there is no place for hate in this country, but the hate is already here. So we have to address what is already here and enforce the laws that we have. And a conservative government, not only will we enforce the laws that we have, we will increase sentences for mischief, increase sentences for destruction of public and private and religious property. We'll increase sentences for those that willfully disturb religious
10
service,
seconds.
and pass new laws to protect places of worship and those who attend them. And also deport those who are committing these hate crimes on our street, who are here on a student visa or a permanent resident.
Thank you, Ms. Stintz. Mr. Gasparo, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you for that. Look, Toronto's Jewish community represents 4% of our city's total population, but its members are the victims of almost 40% of hate crimes. Jewish schools, community centers, synagogues, all vandalized. And quite frankly, as I've heard constantly and I've seen as I live in the community, Jewish people feel unsafe in their homes. And this is completely and utterly unacceptable. And that's why I strongly support bubble and security zone legislations to more clearly and directly protect our social institutions. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, this is something that I have spoken at length with the Prime Minister about, and I encouraged him to move forward with federal government legislation that will protect the Jewish community. And him and I spoke at length about this last week. As I also said, I support legislation that increases the penalty for committing an offense if a person is wearing a mask. And I also support legislation that outlaws the displaying of flags or emblems from listed terrorist organizations, like they have in other jurisdictions. And in addition, as your member of parliament, I will also encourage and help organizations apply for the security infrastructure program, which many institutions here in Eglinton-Lawrence have benefited greatly from. And just this week, on Friday and Sunday, I spoke to members of the community who benefited from accessing this program. So we will expand it
10
and
seconds.
we will add more funding for it so members of the community can feel safe, and to ensure the federal government has their back on security matters.
Thank you, Mr. Gasparo. And Mr. Gasparo, just before we continue, I wanted to let you know that at times your mic was cutting out a little bit. I don't know if you have the opportunity to adjust that. I just want to make sure that everyone can hear your answers.
Is anyone able to hear me? It comes up.
We can hear you. It's just it's cutting out a little bit. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to
Sure.
to rectify that.
Sure. I'll put my earbuds in. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mr. Gasparo. Mr. Krzyzewski, over to you. You have 2 minutes.
Sound like you're underwater. Anyway, so both statements are good. However, let's be clear. The criminal code that we currently have already gave us the tools to fight such hate crimes. The real issue actually comes from enforcement and preparation, as well as training, right? One thing is writing it down on paper, putting it through legislation. The other is, how do we put it into practice? How do we put it into the main work? How do we get the police officers to do their job properly? Right now, too many officers aren't equipped to identify hate early, and that's where we need to act. Myself, as the Green candidate, I'll push for a mandatory hate crime training and better coordination between federal and local law enforcement, because they are not receiving the proper funds, and if not regarding the funds, they're not receiving it in the big quality where demand meets the quality. But policing alone isn't enough. We need to also continue education in schools, better tracking of hate incidents, and early intervention programs to stop radicalization before it even starts, right? A safer Canada doesn't come from reacting after harm is done. It comes from building systems that prevent hate from taking root in the first place.
Thank you, Mr. Krzyzewski. Ms. Stintz, we will now go to you. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. So am I rebutting Vince? Or sorry,
Uh,
1 minute?
I'll pause our time.
Or the green candidate, Karen. It's up to you.
We're giving our candidates the opportunity to provide a recap, a rebuttal, whatever, however we want to stylize it to all the comments that have been provided to each question. So it's 1 minute to recap, however you'd like.
Okay, great. So I think basically what I heard from everybody is that the laws are there, but they're not being enforced. And so the question really that those need to answer is, are you going to trust a government that has not enforced those laws for 9 years and has shown no intention to enforce those laws to somehow change and enforce them moving forward? I would offer to you the answer is no. That if you want these laws enforced, you need to elect a government that is committed to providing not only the moral clarity and the resources to enforce these laws, but also the expectation that if a municipality and the province are not enforcing the laws in their books, then they will not be able to leverage federal funding. And we just need to be clear. We will hold organizations, the municipal and the provincial level of government, accountable for enforcing these laws. If they do not enforce these laws, they will not be eligible for federal funding.
10 seconds.
And we have seen other jurisdictions, such as in Alberta, where they do enforce the laws and they don't see the hate on the streets that we see in this city. So we know we can do it. We're just not doing it the way that it needs to get done, and the Conservative government will get it done.
Thank you, Ms. Stintz. Mr. Gasparo, over to you for a 1 minute recap.
Thank you. The overall view here is that we need bubble legislation. We've heard it from the experts, Karen, not from you, but in the Conservative Party, but from the actual experts, the police. They've said bubble legislation would be very helpful in combating anti-Semitism and hate around our social institutions. So if that's what they're telling us, then that's what we're going to work towards actually getting. And as I said, the Prime Minister and I spoke about this last week in depth. And I want to be perfectly clear that this is a top priority for the government, and it's a top priority for me, because I hear it from the experts and I hear it from people on the street. Over the last 60 days,
10 seconds.
I've knocked on over 40,000 doors. I can tell you that the community wants this legislation, and it's a top priority for us.
Thank you, Mr. Gasparo. Mr. Krzyzewski, you have 1 minute to recap.
Yep. And I want to push back a bit because this isn't just about changing the law itself. It's about actually using it. As I said earlier, we already have laws on the books to fight hate, but when victims speak up about nothing, right, and nothing happens, those laws might as well not even exist. So the real failure is in enforcement, training, and trust, most importantly. If the police doesn't have the trust in it, if the people don't have the trust in the police, then the police won't do its job properly. If communities don't feel protected, they won't report. And if police aren't properly trained, they'll miss the signs. We need more than tough talk. We need action that starts before the crime is committed. That means education, community outreach, and early intervention. A justice system that's reactive instead of proactive is already too late. And I'm running to change that.
Thank you, Mr. Krzyzewski. We will now proceed to our second question. Our second question is, if elected, what steps will you and your party take to list all terrorist organizations, along with individuals and entities that belong to them, that endanger the lives of Canadians and individuals around the world? Ms. Stintz, the floor is yours. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. It's an interesting question about what steps we will take, because the reality is we don't have to take any steps. We just need to do it. And in fact, it was the Conservatives that were leading the charge to have the IRGC declared as a terrorist organization, and actually had to push the Liberals to get there. So, we mounted a pressure campaign so that we could get that terrorist organization dedicated as such. And it was on the eve of a by-election that the Liberals were worried about losing, where it finally actually passed Parliament. And if not for the work of Melissa Lantsman, may not have been done. And so even when we're not in power, the Conservatives are leading the charge around listing terrorist organizations when they bring terror onto our streets and across the globe. In addition to the IRGC, we push to have Samadun and the Houthis listed as terrorist organizations. So it's not a complicated, lengthy process. It's a matter of action and leadership. And we've already seen that terrorists have infiltrated Canada and around the globe, and they are threatening our security, threatening our safety, bringing hate onto our streets, burning our flag. And so again, the question is, why isn't the Liberal government doing anything to address it? They talk, but they don't act. And so we need a government that will actually provide action and leadership and make sure that we're cutting foreign aid to these bureaucracies that are promoting hate, cutting foreign aid to dictators, cutting foreign aid to UNRWA, because we know that they're funding, that we know what they're doing, and they're funding Hamas and they're funding terror in the Middle East, and it's coming onto our soil here. And so all of that needs to be stopped, and it will be stopped under the Conservative government. And it doesn't need steps, it just needs leadership.
Thank you, Ms. Stintz. Mr. Gasparo, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you for this incredibly important question. Look, spreading hatred and fear threatens not only the safety of Canada's Jewish community, but also the very fabric of Canadian society. We have an obligation to ensure that Canadians, and especially Jewish Canadians, feel safe in the communities and schools and places of worship. When we list terrorist entities under the criminal code, it not only makes it harder for them to operate freely on Canadian soil, but it also sends a strong message that Canada will not tolerate certain behavior and will do everything in its power to counter the ongoing threat to Canadians and, quite frankly, to their national security. I will always support any action that makes our community safer.
Thank you, Mr. Gasparo. Mr. Krzyzewski, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Really good question. Honestly, this is very important because terrorism doesn't only affect just one group of people, but everybody. And so here's the thing I really like is how Ms. Stintz spoke about the burning of the flag, the one in BC, I believe. It was genuinely so terrible. Watching a flag be upside down, the Canadian flag. This flag actually, like this right here, right? It is the most blessed, beautiful flag that there is in the world. We've done so much good, and it's horrible to see them burn it and see it upside down. I was very upset at it, and if I'm elected, I will ensure that any group proven to incite, promote, or engage in terrorism is swiftly reviewed and listed under Canadian law. No exceptions, right? This includes everybody, not just foreign groups, but domestic threats as well, like those in BC. Because terrorism doesn't always wear a foreign flag. Fun fact. We also need more transparency in how these listings happen. Canadians deserve to know that decisions are based on solid intelligence, right? Not just politics. That's why I'll push for regular reviews and full accountability in the listing process. And it's not just about naming the groups especially, right? It's the fact that we must also take a strong action against individuals and not just the entities that fund or support them anyway, but those who are genuinely out on the streets and causing such havoc. Whether the threat is global or local, right? The Canadian security must always come before politics. I won't play favorites. I'll stand up for every Canadian right to live in safe and peace.
Thank you, Mr. Krzyzewski. Ms. Stintz, you have 1 minute to recap.
Well, thank you very much. And I've heard from Vince what a strong stand he's going to take in implementing bubble legislation and how he's talked to the Prime Minister. But I do have some questions that I think need to be answered. And Vince, would you call over 400% rise in hate crimes a success of your government? And how is that standing up in support of the Jewish community? And also, I would like to know, do you stand behind Mr. Carney's comments that he made last night when he said that he is aware of the genocide in Palestine, and that's why there's an arms embargo? These are things I think that the community needs to know. They need to know where you stand on these matters. If you wish to be their representative, we need to know whether or not you approve and agree and think that the Liberal track record was a successful one that you want to continue on, or if you're going to stand up and do something differently, we'd like to know what it is. And we'd also like to know whether or not you do agree with your leader's statement,
10 seconds.
or you would take a stand against it.
Thank you, Ms. Stintz. Mr. Gasparo, you will have your minute to recap. I just want to remind all candidates to please mute themselves when they do not have the floor. I promise that each one of you will have the equal opportunity to respond. Mr. Gasparo, your minute starts now.
Sorry, I thought you were going to unmute me there, Richard, when
No,
you
not a
muted me.
problem.
So
You know what,
I guess-
Vince, we're going to restart the clock. You have 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you. So a couple of points. The first is, Karen's done a lot of talking like a career politician and hasn't said anything. There's zero plan in anything that the Conservatives have laid out. It's just attack and distract from their terrible plan or lack of plan, quite frankly. And in regards to this new government, Prime Minister Carney has made it clear that he did not hear the question that was heckled at him in a massive auditorium with, you know, hundreds of people in the room. And he also made it clear that Israel has a right to defend itself and especially deserves access to
10
critical
seconds.
material for the Iron Dome. He's made that perfectly clear. And you seem to forget that. And the Conservatives seem to forget mentioning that point in their attack ads on Instagram.
Thank you, Mr. Gasparo. Mr. Krzyzewski, you have 1 minute to recap.
Great. And I want to challenge what I just heard, right? Because we can't just afford to play favorites when it comes to terrorism. If we're only focused on foreign threats, we're ignoring our growing danger right here at home. Violent extremism doesn't care about borders, right? It can spread anywhere. And we've seen what happens when domestic radical groups are allowed to grow unchecked. I support listing all groups that pose a threat to Canadian lives, foreign or domestic, but also believe the process must be fully transparent, regularly reviewed, and free from political interference. National security, right, isn't just about headlines. It's about consistency, accountability, as well as protecting people, no matter where they are from.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krzyzewski. We will now move on to our third question. Our third question for the evening is, if elected, how will you and your party tackle foreign interference, improve immigration policies, and prevent the spread of extremist ideas to keep Canadians safe and protect Canadian values? Ms. Stintz, you are first. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. So I'd like to start with immigration, that we know has been a problem that is a problem. Canada had the global state-of-the-art approach to immigration for decades. And over the last 9 years, we have seen what was once a pillar become eroded in front of our very eyes. And now we don't actually have an immigration system process at all, because people come to our country in all kinds of ways, and we can't track why they're here and what they're doing. And we know that 50,000 students came to Canada with a student visa and did not go to school. And we do not know what they are doing. We do not know where they are. And we do not know how, like, what, you know, as I say, we don't know what they're doing or where they are. So we don't even know how to address the situation. And we have another, you know, there's estimates that up to 200,000 people have come into Canada and we don't know who they are and we don't know what they're doing. That is an epic failure of the Liberal government over the last 9 years. And so now we've created a situation where we have all kinds of uncertainty in our immigration system, that the US has already highlighted that we're a security threat. We know that we have foreign interference. It was highlighted to us again and again and again over the years. And the Liberal government did everything that they could to stand in the way of a proper investigation of foreign interference and what should be done to tackle it. So the Conservatives will have a registry, a foreign registry, so that we can track who is in our country, what they are doing, who they are influencing, and make sure that they are not interfering with Canadian politics and not interfering in Canadian elections. And for too long, we've had indifference to the threats of our nation, the threats on our border, the threats of our immigration system, and the threats of foreign interference. And a Conservative government will take action. Thank
you, Ms. Stintz. Mr. Gasparo, it is your turn to answer question number 3. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. This is incredibly important. And the fact is, the biggest risk to Canadian democracy is the spread of misinformation and disinformation. So I want to commend all of you who have logged in today to hear directly from the mouths of the candidate. As we're talking about foreign interference, it is unfathomable to many of us that the leader of the Conservative Party refuses to obtain his security clearance. This taints everything he says about foreign interference, as he literally doesn't know what he is talking about. And the Globe and Mail has provided some detail that one of the reasons Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives won't get security clearance is because, according to sources at CSIS, They say the Indian government were actively involved in Pierre Poilievre's leadership race. So he has been the beneficiary of foreign interference. So I guess, as is always the case with the Conservatives, hear no evil, see no evil, as long as it benefits them and not us. So that's point number one. Point number two, in regards to immigration, Prime Minister Mark Carney, the first thing he did is put in an incredibly competent immigration minister in Minister Ben Dayan from Montreal, who also happens to be a strong Jewish woman. So I am glad there is new leadership in this new government to tackle the immigration challenges that our country and other countries have. So I'm glad this new minister is there.
Thank you, Mr. Gasparo. Mr. Krzyzewski, it's your opportunity to answer question number 3. You have 2 minutes.
Right. The foreign interference, immigration, and extremism. I fully support stronger oversight to combat foreign interference that's already present, not just during elections, but in our media, education systems, and political institutions, right? Like Russia, China, India. We must protect our democracy from being influenced by foreign powers with agendas that don't align with Canadian values, right? On immigration, Canada should always be a country that welcomes those fleeing war or persecution, or seeking a better life, right? But we also have a responsibility to ensure that those newcomers are properly vetted and ensure that they can be successfully integrated and fully embrace our values, like the current problems we have, where they're not. Values like equality, democracy, and respect for all. My parents went through the system. They were highly skilled and educated, yet they struggled. Meanwhile, others gamed the system with no intention of contributing. That's not fair to anyone. It's absolutely different nowadays than what it was before. As for extremism, it's often spread online and targets our youth. I see it literally every day. We need to invest in digital literacy, community-led prevention, and counter radicalization programs that work before hate turns into violence. Keep Canadians safe means by being proactive, not just reactive. And I'm ready to act on just that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krzyzewski. Ms. Stintz, you have 1 minute to recap.
Thank you. So we've heard from Vince about his commitment to anti-Semitism and to addressing the immigration system that's failed us. But last year, Liberal MPs on Parliament's Heritage Committee repeatedly blocked a motion that would condemn anti-Semitism at York University, repeatedly, until the clock ran out and it wasn't put before the committee. And even Anthony Housefather, a Liberal MP, expressed his disappointment with his colleagues. So my question is, Vince, is this the party you're running for, or what are you going to do differently? And how are you going to hold Mr. Carney accountable for the actions that he's already taken around Israel and the Jewish community? That is my question for you, Vince.
Am I allowed to respond, or how does this work?
Ms. Stintz, are you finished with your recap? Thank you.
Yes.
So now, Vince, you have a minute to share your thoughts and recap. If you would like to reply to that question, you're more than welcome to do so.
Great. Well, while the Conservative Party continues to look backwards, we're looking forward. We have a new prime minister and we have a new government, and there's new candidates running for this new government. And I can tell you the difference between me and my opponent is I have a track record of standing with the Jewish community, even when I wasn't running for elected office. Try to find something Karen Stintz has actually said in support of the Jewish community when she wasn't running for elected office. There's nothing there. It's just like her plan. There is no plan. There's no plan for the Conservative Party to tackle anything other than copying what previous governments have already done. It is a disgrace, and that's why Prime Minister Carney is laying out a plan to navigate Canada through incredibly difficult challenges that are coming at us.
10 seconds.
And okay.
Oh, but you have 10 seconds.
I saved you 10 seconds there, Richard. There you go.
And I appreciate that. And I thank all of our candidates for being so conscious of the time tonight. And I do want to remind all of our candidates that you will have the opportunity to provide a closing statement at the end of this. So if there's anything that you haven't been able to address, there will be the opportunity for us to cover everything at the end. Mr. Krzyzewski, you have a minute to recap on this question.
Right. And I want to, of course, add something that's been missing from this conversation. It's balance. Yes, we need stronger security, but we also need to be smart, compassionate, right? We need to have a policy that's like that. Fear-based immigration rhetoric, excuse me, doesn't make Canada safer. It divides us. I've seen both sides, right? My parents came here with skills, ambitions, and values, and they still struggle to be seen. Meanwhile, others abuse the systems, and we pretend not to notice. That's unfair to absolutely everyone. Integration has to mean more than paperwork. It has to also mean helping the people, right, that truly become part of the Canadian society. And of course, that protects our values better than any wall ever could. And if we're being serious about stopping extremism, we can't ignore when it's spreading, especially online.
10
Right?
seconds.
Online is the field. In the hands of young people being radicalized in real time, that's where we need to act. And I promise I will.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krzyzewski. We are going to move on to our next question. If elected, what steps will you and your party take to ban hate rallies that support terror entities in sanctioned regimes? Ms. Stintz, the floor is yours. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. As a city councillor from 2003 to 2014, I have a unique perspective on how we can address the rallies and the hate that we see on our street. Because the reality is the police have a lot of mechanisms at their disposal right now to stop that hate. Currently in the city of Toronto, if you want to have a rally, take over the streets, you need to get a permit. None of these rallies have permits. And, I liken it to like unlawful assembly, disturbing the peace. There's all kinds of ways that we can shut these rallies down. Yet our mayor doesn't do it. And she's been allowed to get away with it because we haven't had any federal leadership at the top. And when I think about the Jewish community and how they're impacted by these rallies, when the Jewish community wanted to rally and do a walk for UJA and a walk for Israel, the Jewish community they followed the process. They took out their permit, they paid their fees, they paid $100,000 so they could walk up Bathurst in solidarity for Israel and as a community. And instead of the police protecting their rally and acknowledging that they've taken every step that they were supposed to take, including paying their fees so that they could peacefully walk up Bathurst and celebrate Israel and celebrate their solidarity, they again were inflicted by hate at Bathurst and Wilson. And it is unacceptable because these rallies shouldn't be happening. The city has everything at their disposal to stop them from happening. And yet they're not doing what they need to do. And so a conservative government will hold municipalities accountable. And if they want federal funds and they want federal support, they will uphold their own laws. They will ensure that hate doesn't take over our streets.
10 seconds.
And when hate crimes are being committed, they will be prosecuted. It is completely unacceptable that we have all the tools at our disposal, yet we aren't using them because we don't have leadership and we've created this opportunity for hate to take over our streets. And the only thing we hear people say is that there's no place for hate. But again, it is already here. It is long overdue that we've been trying to act.
Thank you, Ms. Stintz. Mr. Gasparo, you have 2 minutes to answer question number 4. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hate propaganda is not free speech and cannot be tolerated. Full stop, end of sentence. And although the criminal code provides the tools to enable law enforcement to break up hate rallies, frankly, there's no question that there has been a failure of police and prosecutors to fully enforce Canadian laws against anti-Semitism, including hate-motivated offenses under the criminal code. The fact is, it is a responsibility of the government to set the tone and to be clear that hate crimes will not be tolerated. That is why I support, and I've said it constantly, and I'm going to continue to say it, bubble and security zone legislation. And I'm going to say it again. I encouraged the Prime Minister when I met with him last week solely on this, because it is incredibly important for us to move forward and to provide security and comfort to the Jewish community that has been under attack. I will take all the steps necessary as well to ban the display of symbols of terrorist organizations that are listed under the criminal code. And I will always support any action that makes our community safer.
Thank you, Mr. Gasparo. We are going to go to you, Mr. Krzyzewski. 2 minutes to answer question number 4. The floor is yours.
Right. A very controversial thing is freedom of speech, right? So the problem is peaceful protest is a cornerstone. Well, this isn't the problem. Peaceful protest is a cornerstone of our democracy, right? And it must always be protected. But there's a line. And when rallies turn into platforms for hate speech, right, like such as incitement to violence or support for terror organizations or sanctioned regimes, the line is crossed, right? If elected, we'll push for stricter permitting processes where public gatherings are screened more thoroughly for intent and inflations. Law enforcement must have the tools and legal backing to step in before these events escalate. Like we've seen, right, with certain rallies where banned flags are flown or, group known for extremism show up under different names. We saw what happened in Toronto. For example, in March 2025, right, like when ahead of the Al-Quds Day rally in Toronto, right, city officials have seen like how there were hate flags, right, anti-Semitic phrases were said out loud, right? Or for example, last year in November 2024, right, when there was the anti-NATO and pro-Palestinian protest in Montreal, right, like there were cars set on fire, right? And so for that case, we're going to make sure that these events where hate speech and glorification of violence were broadcasted openly, that cannot continue under the protection of free expression. Protecting democracy doesn't just mean allowing speech. It means having the courage to stop those who abuse it, right, to promote violence and fear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krzyzewski. Ms. Stintz, the floor is yours for a 1-minute recap.
Thank you. Yeah, again, it's frustrating to sit and listen to Vince defend a liberal record that has let down so profoundly the Jewish community and talk about bubble legislation as a way of preventing the hate that we see in our streets. And yes, again, if we had any leadership and if we had leadership for the last 9 years, you're right, Wayne, we wouldn't see the hate that we see in our streets. We wouldn't have seen the encampments on campuses. We wouldn't see the takeover of Union Station. We wouldn't see the protests in front of Mount Sinai Hospital. We wouldn't see what happened over the bridge on Avenue Road that is directly in our community events. We wouldn't see it if we had leadership that stood up and defended what is hate speech. But they don't defend it. They don't defend the communities that are being impacted by this hate. In fact, everybody
10
just
seconds.
protects it and calls it freedom of expression. It is not freedom of expression, and it could have been shut down, and it would have been shut down if we had any leadership over the last several years to stop this scourge of anti-Semitism that we are all experiencing, that doesn't just affect the Jewish community, that affects this entire country.
Thank you, Ms. Stintz. Mr. Gasparo, your 1-minute recap.
I'm glad Karen mentioned leadership, because when she's not running for elected office, she shows no leadership. All of a sudden, she goes silent. There is no record of you saying anything, Karen, about the Jewish community until you decide to run for elected office. So if you want to talk about leadership, let's start drilling down on the leadership of the people on this panel. So that's point one. Point two, I can tell you, as I look forward and I look at this new government and this prime minister, we are going to lay out a plan here that's actually going to defend and protect the Jewish community. And I can tell you, they tell me constantly the help that they need.
10 seconds.
And there's been some areas on the security file where the federal government has done an admirable job, and there's organizations and schools that have benefited from it. We're going to do more, and we're going to double down on that to protect the community at all costs.
Thank you, Mr. Gasparo. Mr. Krzyzewski, your 1-minute recap.
All right, well, heard broad statements, right? Let's be honest. When cars are set on fire in Montreal or terrorist flags are waved in downtown Toronto, we're not talking about just peaceful protests anymore. The Charter protects expression, yes, but not hate speech, not incitement of violence, and definitely not support for terrorist entities. If we don't draw, right, a firm line, we're giving extremists the cover of legitimacy. That's why I support a stronger permitting process and real-time coordination with law enforcement to shut down hate before it even escalates, not even after. We can protect freedom and security at the same time. And anyone who tells you it's one or the other isn't being honest, well, with Canadians.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krzyzewski. We will go on to our final question for this portion of tonight's event. Question number 5 is, if elected, what actions will you and your party take to implement and apply Canada's definition of anti-Semitism, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition, across federal departments and agencies? Ms. Stintz, the floor is yours. You have 2 minutes.
Well, I'm actually very proud of the Conservative record because in 2010, it was the Conservative government that first adopted the IHRA definition as part of the International Ottawa Protocol on combating anti-Semitism. So the Conservative Party has a long history of leadership when it comes to combating anti-Semitism in our country. Brian Mulroney, probably one of the best prime ministers that this country's ever had, was very clear on why anti-Semitism was a scourge in our nation and needed to be combated. Stephen Harper, again, another tremendous defender of Israel and the Jewish people, and was led through moral clarity and vision around how this country needed to uphold our values. And allowing anti-Semitism to express itself in our street is not that. It wasn't until the Liberal government got elected that we saw the rise in anti-Semitism that we have, and the 400% increase in hate crimes and communities feeling unsafe. And so it is under that umbrella that we, again, need to reestablish that we support the IHRA definition and that we will ensure it is implemented in all federal departments, in all agencies that do business with the federal government, and that we will take a strong stand in defense of Israel and in defense of the Jewish people that have experienced the hate in their neighborhoods and the security costs that they have had to absorb because the government isn't doing their job in terms of keeping our communities safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stintz. Mr. Gasparo, the floor is yours. 2 minutes.
Thank you. Anti-Semitism is a threat not only to Jewish individuals in the Jewish community, but to Canadian society as a whole. And once again, let me just be perfectly clear. Protection of one is protection of the other. And in regards to implementing the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition, it is absolutely imperative it is applied all across the federal government. Specifically for federal law enforcement, the definition should be used in staff training to increase understanding and awareness of the many and varied forms of anti-Semitism. And it also should be used to inform their thinking in identifying and recording hate incidents and crimes. And frankly, I think this would help federal law enforcement to do their crucial work in protecting the Jewish community and preserving our safety. The fact is, anti-Semitism has no place in Eglinton-Lawrence or anywhere in Canada, and you have my word as your MP. I will work to have the IHRA definition incorporated across all federal departments and agencies, and will continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Jewish community as I had well before I ever decided to run for elected office.
Thank you, Mr. Gasparo. Mr. Krzyzewski, you have 2 minutes.
Right. And anti-Semitism is on the rise, right, as we're talking about, and we need to treat it with urgency. I support using the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism as a guiding tool across federal departments. It's an internationally recognized standard that helps identify how anti-Semitism exists, right, in both traditional and modern forms, including the subtle forms like Holocaust denial or coded hate speech, right? But we must also apply it with care. The Green Party's belief is in protecting communities and free speech. Criticism of a government, including Israel's, is not anti-Semitism. The distinction is critical if we want to uphold both justice and democracy. The Green Party has taken meaningful action. We've supported human rights legislation, anti-racism education, and stood firmly against all form of hate, including, of course, anti-Semitism. We've pushed for an increase in accountability in public institutions, and our MPs have consistently spoken out when Jewish Canadians were targeted. I'm proud to build on that record, because protecting Jewish Canadians isn't optional, it's a moral obligation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krzyzewski. Ms. Stintz, the floor is yours for a 1-minute recap.
Thank you very much. Again, I'm struck by how committed Vince is to, the Jewish community and ramping, and addressing anti-Semitism. But he's running for a party that has over the last 2 years has repeatedly and consistently not done what it needed to do to, in fact, address the anti-Semitism that we see on our streets. Again, the Heritage Committee blocked a motion that would have taken a stand against the anti-Semitism that we see at York University. We have your Liberal MPs events that are going to encampments in defense of the pro-Palestinian hate. We have your new prime minister giving $100 million to Gaza with no conditions on how that money is being spent. We have your prime minister that is
10 seconds.
Talking about why an arms embargo is in place because there's genocide in Palestine, which was the question. So my question is, why would you choose to run for this party if you have a history of defending the Jewish community?
Thank you, Ms. Stintz. Mr. Gasparo, the floor is yours. 1 minute recap.
Prime Minister Carney is best suited to deal with the crises that are going to be coming at us over the next 4 years. And the fact of the matter is, my allyship for the community is a matter of public record and has been there well before I ever ran for elected office. The Prime Minister did 3 big things. He made Marco Mendicino his chief of staff, a proud Zionist, proud allies of the community, his top political advisor. Second, they nominated me here in Eglinton-Lawrence, a staunch defender and lion for the community. And third thing he did was he made Minister Bendayan, the new Minister of Immigration, a strong Jewish woman. 3 concrete actions the Prime Minister took to make to show the way forward for our country.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gasparo. Mr. Krzyzewski, you have 1 minute to recap.
You can see the flames, and I appreciate what's been said. But let's be honest, vague condemnations aren't enough. Anti-Semitism, right, doesn't just live in the past. It's alive, and it's well grown today in our schools, our politics, and even our protests, right? What we've seen. That's why I support using the IHRA definition, not as a weapon to silence people, but as a tool to educate, prevent, and respond, right? We have to be clear that anti-Semitism comes in many forms, right? Such as pretending it's just one of many types of hate is part of the problem, right? I see it everywhere. Even online is a great definition of what's the people's view today. Jewish Canadians deserve targeted protection, not just blanket statements. And yes, we can apply the IHRA definition and protect free speech, but it takes political courage and clarity. That's what I'm bringing to the table.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krzyzewski. We will now move on to our questions from the audience. We've received a plethora of questions from the audience, and I want to thank our audience members for asking all those questions. Unfortunately, we only have time to pose 3 questions from the audience to our candidates, but I want to encourage all members of the audience, if your questions aren't answered, if you have additional questions after tonight, reach out to your candidates. I'm sure that they would be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. We're going to go with 90 seconds for each one of our questions from the audience. And for our first question from the audience, we are going to start with Mr. Krzyzewski. We will then go to Mr. Gasparo, and then we will go to Ms. Stintz. The first question from the audience is, what are your thoughts about addressing the profound anti-Israel bias now prevalent at the CBC while preserving support for Canadian arts and culture? Mr. Krzyzewski, you have 90 seconds.
I'm so sorry, can you repeat it again?
Yes, I will be happy to do that, and I will pause the clock while doing so. What are your thoughts on addressing the profound anti-Israel bias now prevalent at the CBC while preserving support for Canadian arts and culture? 90 seconds.
Well, specifically CBC, right, with their preservation of supports for arts and culture. So I believe media should inform the public, right, not just manipulate what we see. If there's profound bias within the CBC, right, or any publicly funded outlet, it must be addressed through transparency, oversight, internal accountability, and I think journalistic standards. Canadians deserve media they can trust, right? That said, I don't support defunding the CBC. It plays a very critical role in supporting Canadian arts and culture, Indigenous storytelling, and of course, local journalism, especially in regions where private media, right, and outlets have pulled. The solution isn't to gut it, it's to fix it, right? We need to have a stronger editorial independence, better representation of diverse voices, and of course, clear standards that hold all journalists, right, publicly funded or not, to account. I believe we can preserve such broadcasting and raise the bar because culture thrives when the truth does.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krzyzewski. Mr. Gasparo, 90 seconds.
Thank you. And thank you for the question, whoever posted it. Look, a constant theme from I think many of you have taken from my comments and remarks is that Jewish culture, Jewish values, Jewish concerns are Canadian culture, Canadian values, and Canadian concerns. They're one and the same. They're not mutually exclusive. And I think we need to keep looking at our institutions in that light, and we need to hold them to account in that light. And my view is that the CBC and all media has to play an important role in ensuring that they remain balanced. And if there's any bias there, it needs to be rooted out. The fact of the matter is, and this goes back, I think, to the IHRA question, that we make sure the IHRA definition is spread out throughout the entire federal government. And I did lay out agencies that this definition is going to be mandatory for them to adopt. And that goes for all Crown corporations right across the federal government. And that's something that I think is incredibly important.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gasparo. Ms. Stintz, 90 seconds.
Thank you. Well, Pierre Poilievre has been very clear and very consistent in that he will defund his government, that I am very proud to be part of, will defund the CBC. And the bias has been there at the CBC for the last several years. And as a result, the CBC is becoming less and less relevant in the lives of many Canadians. We know that in English Canada, the listenership to the CBC has declined to the point of almost wondering what value it is providing. And again, the new Liberal government, the new Liberal Prime Minister has announced an additional amount of money for CBC to continue its bias reporting to a smaller segment of Canadian society. So more money to become less relevant. And I don't know how that possibly is good value for anyone's money. But that is the Liberal position. That is not the Conservative position. The Conservative position will be, we do not have the money to fund a biased organization that reaches a very small number of people. And in terms of arts and culture, again, the Liberal government did a major disservice to arts and culture organizations when they no longer allowed donations to be given through securities that would enable the capital gains to be offset through the donation. And so we've seen now that that is no longer an option. And we've seen private donations decline to arts and cultural organizations as a result.
Thank you, Ms. Stintz. For our next question from the audience, we will first go to Mr. Gasparo, and then to Ms. Stintz, and then to Mr. Krzyzewski. The second question from the audience is, we have another crisis in Canada, one that involves drugs. What will your party do to curb the drug crisis currently plaguing our society? Mr. Gasparo.
Thanks. Thank you for the question. Look, it is a serious issue. I've had family members who've been impacted by addiction issues and challenges, and I've seen how it's ravaged families and the amount of effort that is taken to provide those individuals and the families with support. It is a serious issue, and we see it ravaging not only Canadian provinces and municipalities, but you see it happening in other jurisdictions around the world. It is a serious, serious problem. And like I said, there's been some personal family issues there that we've had to manage. So I have a great deal of empathy and sympathy for this. So that's point one. Point two is, I think there needs to be continued emphasis on treatment, and we need to give people the mental health supports that are required. This is a mental health crisis as well as a drug addiction crisis. It's one and the same. And if you go to a lot of our hospitals, Sunnybrook Hospital, for example, is ravaged by folks who are coming in there with addiction issues. We have to get a handle on this. This is an incredibly serious issue. Thank you very much, Mr. Gasparo. Ms. Stintz, 90 seconds.
Yeah, as Vince said, there's no question that the drug crisis is impacting Canadian cities and communities across Canada. And what the Conservative government will do is begin to recognize the dignity of the individual. And there is no dignity in being allowed to have state-provided opioids to continue your addiction. The way that we protect the dignity of individuals is to provide treatment, to make sure that they have a chance to recover. And we have tried experiments of allowing open drug use. We've had experiments of providing state-issued opioids. We've experimented with safe injection sites near schools and daycares. And we found that those experiments not only stripped the individuals of their dignity, it put communities at risk. And so a Conservative government will recognize that treatment is a process. It needs to be invested in. The dignity of the individual needs to be protected. But we will no longer provide government-funded opioids to individuals that then get diverted and then create new addictions elsewhere. We will no longer allow for open drug use around schools, parks, and daycares. And safe injection sites, I think reasonable people would all agree that you don't have open drug use near daycares, parks, and schools.
10 seconds.
And so the Conservative government will recognize what needs to be done to keep communities safe, to protect the individuals and their dignity as they're dealing with addictions, and invest in treatment that works. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stintz. Mr. Krzyzewski, 90 seconds.
Horrible opioids, right? As you both said, it's genuinely horrible. I have someone who I knew from my school who died from an opioid overdose. Condolences to them, and I'm sorry. And so as a result, we're in the middle of a national crisis, and it's taking lives on our street, right, in our parks, and inside even our homes, right? If elected, I'll push for a balanced approach. One that treats addiction as a health issue, not just criminal one. We need more treatment centers, mental health funding, and early intervention, especially for youth in school, like what I've said. But let me be clear. Enabling drug use without building real recovery right pathway is a dead end. I don't support open drug use in public spaces like parks and transit. It not only puts families, seniors, but also vulnerable people at risk. We need to expand our detox programs, hold traffickers accountable, and help people get clean, right? Just to keep them alive, right? This crisis is robbing Canadians of their futures. It's time we get serious and stop pretending there's a one-size-fits-all situation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krzyzewski. We will now move on to our final audience question. For this question, we will hear from Ms. Stintz first, followed by Mr. Krzyzewski, and then finally Mr. Gaspero. Our third audience question is, what will your party do to improve Canada's economic productivity in the near term? Ms. Stintz?
Well, thank you. Thank you for that question. Some of you may know that at the end of the Harper administration, Canada's GDP per capita was equivalent to that of Singapore. After 9 years of Liberal policies, we now have a GDP per capita that equals Mississippi. So we know we have a lot of work to do in terms of investing in our economy, and it's done through several levers. One is through fixing the taxation system that we have right now. With a 53% marginal tax rate, there is no incentive to work right now. And so the Conservative government has committed to, Pierre Poilievre has committed to reducing all tax brackets by 15%. In addition, we have a capital gains restructuring that means that if you sell a capital asset, all your capital gains will be tax-free if you reinvest in a Canadian asset. And that will spur productivity. It will spur investment in our economy. In addition, we will be building and investing in our infrastructure, our critical infrastructure. And unlike the Liberals that have said they will not repeal the Anti-Pipeline Act, we will repeal that act, and we will be investing in pipelines so that we can ship critical resources across the country and into global markets that need liquefied natural gas and other of our critical minerals. So for too long, we have taken the approach that we can't develop our resources, and we've had emissions caps, and we've had a stagnant growth because we haven't had investment. And in fact, we've had the loss of capital flight leaving our country. Pierre Poilievre is seized with that and understands how important it is to build our economy, not just for the sake of our kids and their jobs and our future, but also to withstand the shocks from the US. And we will take measures quickly in order to be investing, in order to, again, improve the productivity of this country.
Thank you, Ms. Stintz. Mr. Krzyzewski, 90 seconds.
And the Green Party believes a strong economic starts with you people. And that means real affordability, right? Not just stats on spreadsheets. Firstly, we have to tackle the housing crisis by cutting the bureaucracy that's blocking solutions. Right now, people want to build housing, right? We can go on specifically green housing, affordable units, community-led projects, and it's government red tape that's slowing them down. I've lived it myself. It has no end. We'll empower cities to fast-track sustainable development, right? Convert underused or even lots that are not even used into housing and support renters and first-time buyers with targeted relief. We'll grow the economy by investing in small businesses, green tech, and local food systems, right? Not just relying on corporate bailouts and imports, especially with the current United States threat. And most importantly, we'll create a system where working Canadians, right, they don't only have to fight for bureaucracy just to get, a living place, a job they can have, and a life they can afford, but we're going to make it better. And that's the future we're building.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krzyzewski. Mr. Gasparo, 90 seconds. The floor is yours.
Thank you. This election is the most consequential election in our country's history. We are under attack from President Donald Trump, and we have to make sure that we are best positioned to do that. And no one is better positioned than Prime Minister Mark Carney to take on Donald Trump and the United States. And he's already laid out in this first month as being Prime Minister, removing all interprovincial trade barriers by July 1st. He's already convened the premiers. They've all agreed. Second, cutting income taxes. When Parliament resumes, Prime Minister Mark Carney will introduce legislation that cuts middle-class income taxes. Third, he's going to fast track all energy projects, in particular renewable energy projects, right across the country. He's already made that commitment. The fourth, and I can't stress this enough, defend Canada against the tariffs that Donald Trump is using to bring us to our knees. I never thought I would see the day that the President of the United States would come out and say he wants to cripple our economy so that he can annex Canada. This is the top priority for this government, to fight Donald Trump. He turned his back on Canada, he turned his back on Ukraine, and he's turned his back on Israel. And Prime Minister Mark Carney is reworking the global financial system around the United States.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gasparo. We will now go to the final portion of tonight's event, our closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to deliver their closing remarks. We'll start with Mr. Gasparo. We will then go to Mr. Krzyzewski, and we will conclude with Ms. Stintz. When you're ready, Mr. Gasparo, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Richard. And thank you all for joining this incredibly important discussion. What we've heard here tonight is, again, from the Conservative Party, attack and distract from the fact that they have no plan on how to deal with what is coming at us in the future. We are under attack by the President of the United States, who wants to take over our country. He wants to impoverish us, and so that he can annex us at a discount. Those are his words. So we have to do everything we can to defend our country, and Prime Minister Mark Carney is best suited to address that. In addition, in regards to our Jewish community that has been under attack here in Eglinton-Lawrence, and as I've said throughout this entire discussion, Jewish values are Canadian values, and Canadian values are Jewish values. And we have to do everything we can to preserve those values and keep our community safe. And that is why I've spent a great deal of time speaking with the Prime Minister about bubble and security legislation that will keep our social institutions safe. Our schools, our community centers, our senior centers, our daycare centers, our places of worship. This is something that's absolutely critical. And this bubble legislation will will allow us to protect those institutions. The second is the passing of a private members bill that will increase the criminality on anyone who commits a crime while covering their face. This is a nonpartisan issue, and we should have full support across the aisle for this. I really appreciate all of you joining in, and I look forward to knocking on your doors in the near future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gasparo. We will now go to Mr. Krzyzewski. You have 2 minutes to conclude.
I love today. This is a great evening. And I'm not here because politics have always worked for me. I'm here because it hasn't. I've seen what happens when government forgets the people it's supposed to serve, when families can't afford housing, right? And when public safety slips, when red tape stops real change from happening. And like you, I'm tired of waiting for someone else to fix it. I am not a career politician. I'm someone who knows what it's like to fight the system, right? Just to charge my car, find a doctor, or feel safe just in my neighborhood. The Green Party isn't just about the environment, right? It's about you, most importantly, in your home, your future, your right to live in a country that actually works, a system. So if you're done with all these old excuses you keep hearing, and you're ready for a bold, honest leadership, I'm ready to serve, right? Not with empty promises, but with an action. Let's rebuild trust. Let's rebuild community, and let's do it together.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krzyzewski. Ms. Stintz, you have 2 minutes to conclude.
Thank you. Thank you. I do appreciate the opportunity to be here today and also to have had the unique privilege of serving the community as a city councillor for 11 years. And because I am a politician and I'm excited to be a politician again as your MP, I would reiterate that this is really an election about change. We know what the last 9 years look like, and they haven't been good. And so now we have an opportunity to vote for change. And the question is, does Vince and Mr. Carney represent change? And the answer, quite frankly, is no. Because even in the short time that Mr. Carney has been Prime Minister, he has continued on many of the same policies and many of the same leadership, I would say, failures as the previous government. Mark Carney, although he said he canceled the carbon tax, he didn't cancel the rebate. So in his, as I say, he's only been Prime Minister for 3.5 weeks, and he's already increased our debt by another $3.2 billion when he mails us checks of our own money right before the election. Mr. Carney had a chance to do things differently and stand up for Israel and stand up for the Jewish community, but he didn't. Instead, he sent $100 million to Gaza. And then when asked if he knew there was genocide in Palestine, he said he was aware, and that's why we have an arms embargo. And so the question is, all the things that Mr. Carney is doing differently, he actually took from the Conservative platform in terms of tax breaks and repealing the capital gains tax. And so although we're being told that Mr. Carney represents change, he actually has all the same people around him. He has the same cabinet, the same people, the same policies, and also the same lack of leadership when we need it most. And so the question for you is, who will represent change? Who will defend this country? This is not an election about Donald Trump. This is an election about Canada.
10 seconds.
So who will defend Canada? Who has a plan? It is Pierre Poilievre, who has been fighting for 3 years, highlighting the things that need to get done. He has a comprehensive plan for the country, and I have a history of standing up for the community, and I look forward to continue to do that. And I will see you again at the doors in the weeks ahead, and I look forward to being your MP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This concludes our Eglinton-Lawrence debate for the 2025 federal election. I want to thank our candidates so much for taking the time out of their busy campaign schedules to be with us here tonight. I have to inform you that I received a lot of feedback in the chat from the audience. They've really enjoyed this, and actually several audience members have asked if you'd be willing to debate again on other issues. So I leave that to you, and I encourage you to take that into consideration. To our audience, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. I hope that you found this debate to be insightful. I hope that you now have a better perspective and a better understanding of our candidates, their parties, and their platforms. And most importantly, I want to take this moment to encourage everyone to vote. So this concludes our event. Thank you to our candidates. Thank you to our audience. And thank you to the B'nai B'rith team for facilitating today.